Hello all, welcome to Abhiram IAS Academy. Let us go through the daily chronicles of January 25, 2025. So the first article is regarding the Niti Aayog's Fiscal Health Index. Okay, so this is the article and it is relevant for your GS3 topic, Mobilization of Resources, Government Budgeting and the subtopic Fiscal Responsibility. So Niti Aayog has actually released a Fiscal Health Index mainly to assess the fiscal health of the different states. That is, whether they are managing their finances in a responsible manner. Is their debt sustainable or not? Okay. And does their fiscal management support the growth in the long term? So this index aims to assess all these factors. Okay. So Fiscal Health Index is developed by Niti Aayog mainly to assess the financial stability of the states. It is mainly taking the data of 18 states. Why 18 states? Because they contribute 85% of India's GDP. So the major 18 states are covered under this. Okay. And it has taken the data of CAG, that is Comptroller and Auditor General data from the year 2022-23. So it mainly highlights the strengths and weaknesses, especially in the area of fiscal management with respect to different states. So there are 5 key metrics under this Fiscal Health Index. That is nothing but quality of expenditure, revenue mobilization, fiscal prudence, debt index and debt sustainability. So quality of expenditure. The state may spend for numerous purposes. It can be for developmental and non-developmental also. That is, it can spend for revenue account like your salary, pensions, okay, and also for development or capital infrastructure that can generate the long-term growth, okay. So it can generate the fixed capital and also some human capital through its developmental expenditure, and it can also spend for some revenue like salary, pensions. So what is the quality of expenditure then? So how much amount is spent for this development of human capital? Okay, that is your developmental expenditure, and also the proportion of capital outlay to the state's GDP. So that is nothing but your fixed assets creation. So that can be understood by looking at the capital outlay to the state GDP ratio. Then we have revenue mobilization. So revenue mobilization is nothing but how efficient is the state in generating the revenues. It can be tax or non-tax. We have tax revenues, okay. So they are mandatory by law and there will be penalties if people don't follow them. So that's why they are tax. And non-tax is your fees. Okay, fees for any kind of services like water, electricity, all these come under non-tax. Also, the center may give some grants to the states. Okay, so this is also non-tax. So how efficient is the state in generating these types of revenues? That is both the tax and non-tax. And fiscal prudence. So what do we mean by prudence? Prudence is nothing but being responsible, especially in the financial management aspect. That is, whether they are adhering to the fiscal deficit targets as prescribed in the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act of each state. Okay, so that can be understood by looking at this index. Then we have debt index. So what is debt index? Debt index is nothing but it evaluates the state's debt profile, overall debt profile. That is, whether the borrowing are external or internal. Okay, whether the interest payments are long term or short term. So all this can be understood if we look at the state's debt profile. So that is debt index. And then we have major component, that is debt sustainability. So when do we say a debt becomes sustainable? That means the state should have the ability to repay the debt. Okay, so we can understand this by looking at debt by GSDP ratio. If the state's GSDP is high enough, it can have some cushion to repay its debt. So a lower debt GDP ratio is preferable for the state's financial health. So that can be understood by looking at this ratio. So whether the debt is manageable and can it actually repay. So it reflects the servicing ability of the state without compromising on the developmental agenda. That is it able to fuel the growth sufficiently? Without compromising the growth, it has to pay the debt. So that can be understood by looking at the debt sustainability index. Let us look at the different performances of different states. So we can see Odisha is the top performer, next comes Chhattisgarh, and the third is Goa, and then we have Jharkhand and Gujarat. So these are the achievers, and then we have front runner states. So these are the next best performing states, that is Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka and Maharashtra. So why these three states? You can have some similarity among these three. That is nothing but mining. So mining is contributing significantly to the non-tax revenue among these states. Okay, that is their revenue mobilization scored very high. So that is indicating their financial health. So next comes the remaining states among these 18 states, that is your Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Rajasthan, Punjab and Haryana, and here we have Bihar and West Bengal. So these states are actually struggling in their financial aspects. So that is indicating the fiscal stress among these states. Okay. Let us have a look at the top performers, that is Odisha and Chhattisgarh. So Odisha has scored the highest, scoring 67.8 overall. And what are its strengths? It has low fiscal deficits. So the borrowings of the state are manageable and they are very much within the limits of fiscal deficit targets. So it has low fiscal deficit and its debt index is also good. It scored very high on the debt index, that is its debt profile. Okay, debt profile of the state is impressive. Then we have mining revenue optimization. That means the state is efficiently utilizing its mining non-tax revenue for its developmental and capital outlay activities. So that is the case study of Odisha. And then we have Chhattisgarh, that is it has high mining revenue just like Odisha, that is contributing to its revenue mobilization, especially the non-tax aspect, but its debt sustainability is not so great. So it has these issues despite the strong revenues. So let us have a look at the struggling states, that is West Bengal, Punjab and Kerala as examples. So these three states have different problems, like either their interest payments are too high, okay, and their revenues are very limited, that they are unable to meet their obligations, and then their debt profile is poor. Okay, so for West Bengal, we have high level of interest payments. Around 20% of its revenue goes to just the interest payments. That means the remaining 80% is left for the state to spend. It will usually spend on both revenue and other capital needs. So most of it goes to the revenue account because the state has to pay the salaries and pension and other obligations. Okay, so it leaves very little left for the developmental aspects. So that is one challenge West Bengal is facing. And regarding Punjab, the concern is high debt burden. So the debt burden itself is high and we have to focus on diversifying the revenues and rationalizing the expenditure. That is, we have to reduce the wastages and also improve the revenue sources and diversify them. So Kerala, the problem is limited revenue avenues, okay, and developmental spending. So because of the limited revenue, it is unable to focus on developmental aspects because it is struggling to meet its financial obligations like your revenue expenditure. So what is the solution for this? We have to optimize the resources and focus on the capital expenditure. That is, you have to focus your expenditure on the capital outlay, generating some long-term physical infrastructure, okay, and it will serve the public in the long run and also put the state on long-term path of the growth. So this can happen with the capital expenditure. So we have a mixed picture with respect to some states. Let us go through them. So one is Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. They are very good at expenditure quality. That is, they are good at spending for development and also capital, but their revenue mobilization is comparatively poor. So it cannot fuel developmental expenditure in the long run. And then we have Karnataka. So Karnataka has good overall performance, but its debt sustainability is relatively weak. So that is the case of Karnataka. And in Gujarat, we can see high expenditure quality. That is, it is spending well on its developmental and capital outlays. So what are the insights from this? We have to enhance our revenue mobilization efforts. We have to diversify the revenue sources and also improve the tax compliance of the states. Only then we can aim to fund our long-term growth. Okay. And even the debt must be sustainable within the limits, and the borrowings should not be crossing the fiscal deficit targets. So consistent performance in this aspect will improve the fiscal credibility of the states also. So enhance the revenue mobilization, increase the tax compliance and also non-tax revenues. Prioritize your spending, reduce if there are any kind of wasteful expenditure and focus only on the essential public infrastructure which is useful for the long-term development of the state. And you can also collaborate, that is different states will have different best practices, they can learn from each other. So we have to encourage this interstate collaboration. And then the states need to focus on the structural reforms, especially in the context of upcoming 16th Finance Commission that is going to start in 2026. So what are the structural reforms? They are nothing but adhering to the fiscal deficit targets, okay, improving their revenue sources or also diversifying their sources. All these are nothing but structural reforms. And equitable resource distribution, and also not just generating lot of revenue, it has to be equitably distributed to different stakeholders. Only then we can drive sustainable growth in the long run. So the next article is about artificial intelligence and machine learning, its disruptive potential on the job markets of India, and does India have a future shock? Does India face a future shock in its upcoming future? So that is what the article tries to explore. It is relevant to your GS3 topic, economy, employment and also skill development as subtopics. Fear of future shock. India's workforce and the challenge of technological disruption. So the article says there is going to be significant skill disruption in India in the near future, that is by 2030, 38% of skill disruption is going to happen in India, which is highest among the BRICS nations. Okay, that is a group of emerging economies with common interest at the global level. So among these countries, India faces the highest challenge because it has highest percentage of skill disruption. It indicates that its labor force or workforce is not future ready. Most of its skill might go redundant in the upcoming future. Historically, there has always been a debate about whether technology has the potential to create lot of job losses. We can see this in the context of computers' emergence also, especially in 1950s. Okay, there was always a fear, but neoclassical economists like Adam Smith says technology will disrupt the existing skills, okay, but it will create new jobs and new industry because of innovation. But other economists like Karl Marx on the other extreme, they want that there will be worker displacement and impoverishment also. So this is also true to some extent. What is the current scenario, especially in the context of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics? Most of the human skills might go redundant. So that is the immediate future context. To understand the disruptive potential of this technology, let us look at the figures regarding technology-driven roles and also human-led efforts. So what is the percentage of these two and how will it change in the near future? So right now in India, human-led efforts constitute 48%. That is 48% of the tasks are performed by the humans alone. That is half of the tasks, and then it will decline to 31% in 2030. So it will drastically decline. It is close to 20% decline, which is shocking. And then at a global level also, we can see similar decline, 48% to 33%. And then regarding technology, technology is going to take up a lot of job roles which are performed earlier by humans. So right now it is at 22% in India, but it is going to be 34% by 2030. Similarly, at the global level also, we can see same data, that is 22% to 34%. So the article is saying there is going to be significant disruption driven by the upcoming technologies like AI. So let us have a look at this. India, we have already seen 38% skill disruption by 2030, and Brazil sees 37%, which is similar to India, and China is going to see 33%, which is less comparatively. And for Russia, the data is unavailable, so it is not included in this study. So what is skill disruption? It is nothing but rapid changes in the workforce skills which need to be upgraded, that is reskilling or upskilling is must to stay relevant in the job market. So you either have to reskill or upskill. So what do we mean by these terms? Upskill is nothing but you have a current role or a job. You just need to upgrade your skills. Okay, to stay relevant to the job market demands. So that is upskilling. That is, the role or the job per se will not change, but in reskilling, we need to change the job or the role also. That is, a person needs to acquire completely new skills for a completely new role. Okay, so that is reskilling. So we need rapid reskilling and upskilling if we want to stay relevant in the future. So in this context, India needs to focus immensely on upgrading its skills, especially in these areas, that is artificial intelligence, machine learning and data analytics. So let us look at the internet access across these countries and understand where India stands. So India in 2014 had just 10% internet penetration, but right now it is at 52%. Comparatively, all other BRICS nations are above us. So all these are BRICS nations, but India stands at the bottom among the BRICS nations. So we have improved significantly, but it is not enough. We can understand the readiness of our workforce by looking at some parameters like labor market readiness and task replacement by 2030. So labor market readiness is nothing but how much amount of our workforce is actually future ready. So as per the study, 42% of India's workforce is future ready. Okay, we have scored 3 out of 7, but it is comparatively less to other countries. China has 71%, that is 71% of its current workforce stays relevant and will not lose jobs. And even Brazil has performed better, that is 57% of its workforce is future ready. But India, we have 42%. We are the lowest among the BRICS. And regarding the task replacement by 2030, that is how much amount of technology is going to replace the human task so far. So human task will drop. We have seen it will drop from 48% right now, it will drop to 31% by 2030. Okay, and the tech driven roles, that is technology performing the human roles, will increase from 22% to 34%. It is in line with the global trends also. This shows that India is lagging. Okay, India lags in its skills. We need to urgently focus on upgrading our skills. So it also highlights the gaps in the training and skill development. So what are the fastest growing sectors and how does internet penetration actually help in bridging this gap, that is skills gap? So fastest growing sectors, we have seen all these, that is AI, machine learning, big data, cybersecurity, data science, blockchain technology. All these are fastest growing sectors right now. And internet penetration, we have seen India has internet penetration of 52%, which is lowest among the BRICS. Comparatively, globally we have Russia 90% and Brazil we have 86%. So our peers are much better in this aspect also. Internet penetration is crucial to grab the opportunities in the fast growing emerging sectors. Okay, but there is one problem, that is digital divide. So we are facing the problem of digital divide, that is, it is nothing but the gap between different groups, individuals or regions in access to the digital technologies, platforms or digital tools. We need to bridge this digital divide on a faster pace. Okay. The quote by Alvin Toffler is very much relevant in this context. He says about lifelong learning that the illiterate of 21st century is not the one who cannot read or write. It is the one who cannot learn, unlearn and relearn. So what do we mean by this? Initially, we will acquire some skills and knowledge. So that is the learning phase. But if the knowledge or the skills are irrelevant and become redundant, we also have to know how to unlearn them. And whatever is relevant for the industry or the demands of the market, we have to relearn those skills. So that is the meaning of this quote. And then we are seeing some structural challenges also, that is skill mismatch and industry gaps. So skill mismatch is nothing but limited access to the quality, vocational and technical training. So there is a lot of academic knowledge in the educational institutions, but there is very little focus on the vocational education. So vocational is nothing but hands-on experience. Okay, it can be obtained through programs like apprenticeship training. So all these are important if we want to stay relevant to the industrial needs. So we have to focus on this aspect, and especially the quality, not normal vocational, but we want quality vocational and technical education. There are also industry gaps, that is curriculum of the educational institutions are not upgraded, so they are outdated. So the industry finds it difficult because they cannot find the people from these educational institutions who will match the roles they need. So there is a weak alignment between the education and the industrial demands. So that is the problem. Public, private, and also educational institutions need to collaborate together to bridge all these skill mismatches. So what are the recommendations then? We have to strengthen the training programs and expand it to the emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, data analytics and all. And also we can create some regional hubs because most of the regions are underserved. So to reach these areas and also to skill the people in these areas, we need to develop regional hubs. Okay. So that is, we have to strengthen the training first. We also need to encourage collaboration among multiple stakeholders in this domain, that is industry, academicians, and also the government. So we have to partner them up, okay, so that whatever industry needs can be understood by the educational institutions and it can be included in the curriculum. And what can government do? It can offer some tax benefits, especially if the companies are reskilling or upskilling its employees, they can be given some tax benefits. So that's how government can also help in this process. Then we have to promote inclusion also. We have seen digital divide is one major challenge which is preventing us from realizing our full potential. So we need to promote inclusion and fight this digital divide, ensure equal access, especially for the vulnerables like women, rural workers, and the marginalized groups. So how can government help in this area? So it can subsidize those who are actually focusing on educating the low income groups in these emerging technological courses by giving some incentives. Okay, it can subsidize. So how can we conclude this? India is going to face 38% skill disruption by 2030. So it underscores urgent need for India to focus on the emerging technologies and address its digital divide issues. It has to be skill ready and future ready. Okay, we need to focus on skill development and enhance its training infrastructure, foster some partnerships, especially among the industry and educational institutions, and promote inclusive skilling. That is, reach the underserved areas and underserved populations also. Only with such targeted policies, India can aim to overcome these challenges and be future ready, especially in the area of skill disruption by artificial intelligence. That's how we can conclude this. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Abhiram IAS Academy.